In a 6-3 vote released on Tuesday, the United States extremist Supreme Court further eroded our First Amendment protections, specifically the separation of church and state. This new ruling came from a case out of the state of Maine. And what Maine had done is you've got a lot of rural areas where residents do not have access to public schools in some places. So the state had a program where they would give you grants so that you could pay to send your child to a private school. But these grants, because it was, taxpayer money, government money, you couldn't use them to go to any school that had religious education, basically a secular school. Can't do it. But you've got plenty of options with other private schools in these areas. You can go to these instead. Everybody has access at this point. Well, got challenged in court, made it all the way to the Supreme Court, and Chief Justice John Roberts said in his ruling, quote, Maine's program promotes stricter separation of church and state than the federal Constitution requires. The state pays tuition for certain students at private schools, so long as the schools are not religious. That is discrimination against religion, he says. Sounds like Chief Justice John Roberts needs to actually read what the friggin' Constitution says. It's not discrimination against religion. It is literally following the letter of the law of the Constitution. Oh, it's much stricter than what the Constitution says. The Constitution just says you can't do it at all. It says no. So I'm not sure how the state also saying no can be stricter than the Constitution. This was an exceptionally flawed ruling from John Roberts, again, that further erodes the separation of church and state here in the United States. Now, again, I don't know that it's time to, fully sound the alarm bells on this particular issue. It remains to be seen, obviously, whether or not this is going to allow public funds to be able to fund secular schooling for people in areas where public high schools or other schools are available. In Maine, maybe that's the exception. But we'll have to wait and see. And that, of course, is always one of the scariest things. Because now that we have this court precedent, even though precedent clearly doesn't matter to this Supreme Court at all, but it will matter to other conservative judges across the country. They could potentially use this ruling as justification to allow for private school vouchers, using public funds to go to religious schools. So that is, of course, the inherent danger of all of this, that we as taxpayers will eventually begin to start funding religious indoctrination of students here in the United States. That is what this Supreme Court just cracked open the door for. I'm not even going to say they threw the door wide open, but they opened that door a little bit. So we'll have to wait and see what some of these other conservative justices across the country have to say about it when it inevitably comes to them in their states. This is Hattie. Hattie wants to know why you have not subscribed to our channel. You obviously like our videos, so do us a favor and subscribe.